duality, our binary system, our brain, our body. In previous class, we talked about the zero being a representation of the unconditioned state of being. In the Kemetic wisdom, the cosmology of the creation story, where Amen, the one, manifests out of the nothingness, the new, the noon. So we have the unity of all. From that, Amen gives birth to Shu and Tefnu. This becomes the duality of all, which is the subject of this class. What is a binary system? A binary system is a numerical system that uses only two digits, 0 and 1, to represent data and instructions. It's the fundamental language of computers, allowing them to store, process, and communicate information.
We're going to be looking at one of the most basic but fundamental building blocks for every computer and computing system. We're talking about binary code, specifically binary numbers. You know, the alterations of zeros and ones arranged in differing order to transmit information. However, long before even the most rudimentary computers existed, like the one Charles Babbage came up with, binary language existed in several different forms across the ages and civilizations. But before we get into the history, let's make sure we all understand what binary language is. When talking about binary numbers in computing terms, we're speaking of zeros and ones. But in terms of binary language in general, it can be any two opposite things. After all, the prefix of the word bi means two. A switch in the on and off position represents what could be the basis of a binary language. Arranged in an infinite number of ways, flipping a light switch could technically become a language of its own. And if you grew up with an electric fill-obsessed parent, it may already be one you know. As far as the creation of binary code, Gottfried Wilhelm von Leibniz often gets the credit for inspiring the binary numbers we use in the world of electronics. However, binary language, or base 2 systems, existed several hundred years before Gottfried wrote his system in 1679. The indigenous tribe on the island of Mangariba in the French Polynesia created a binary system to keep track of large transactions and trade. Prior to even this culture, the writings that gave Gottfried his inspiration was a Chinese text called I Ching. What makes the link to this 5,000-year-old Chinese document most interesting is that its writings are on philosophy and divination, and the title translates to Book of Changes, or Classic of Changes. What drew Gottfried to make mathematical conclusions from it was the inclusion of hexagrams formed of dashes, either broken or unbroken, signifying the yin and yang, symbols in Chinese philosophy that denote opposites. In a text he wrote, Gottfried believed that all things could be broken down and expressed as sequences of zeros and ones. This became the basis for the modern-day binary code. But others beyond Gottfried also helped inspire the use of this language in computers. George Boole used this to create Boolean algebra in 1854. This system is a little more complex, but it is still based on the idea of two opposing meanings. In this case, he used the number 1 to represent true, and 0 to represent false for logic-based operations rather than mathematical ones. Boolean algebra could be an entire complex episode of its own, but basically any probability statement in algebra can be answered in true or false. These logic operations are used in computer programming languages and circuits, the fundamental components of computers.
How Africans invented binary code and binary calculations well before computers existed in 2500 BC. Africans from the Nubio-Kemetic civilization complex, ancient Ethiopia, and ancient Yoruba all had binary methods of calculating that are far superior to the method taught today. In fact, it is so universal that it is used to perform calculations in all computers and microchips today. And it isn't just binary calculations. There are numerous math principles that were pioneered by black people, but erroneously attributed to the Greeks or the Sumerians. From the foundations of math to its most useful concepts, the evidence is voluminous. Watch the full documentary to see how
What if I told you that long before Europe's great mathematicians ever picked up a quill, African minds had already deciphered the secrets of numbers, time, and the cosmos? That civilizations, thought by many to be primitive, had built mathematical systems so advanced that they still puzzle scholars today. Meet the Ashango bone, a small, unassuming tool from Central Africa, dated over 20,000 years old. But don't let its simplicity fool you. This is no ordinary relic. It holds the earliest known evidence of prime numbers, multiplication, and even a hint of algebra. Thousands of years before the Greeks would claim their place in mathematical history. Now, travel back in time to the land of Kemet, what we now call Egypt. The pyramids rise like sentinels, their massive stones aligned with a precision that modern engineers still struggle to comprehend. But how? The answer lies in a forgotten mathematical genius. The Rhind Papyrus, an Egyptian text over 3,600 years old, reveals an advanced system of fractions, algebra, and geometry. The architects of Kemet calculated angles, slopes, and distances with a mastery that ensured the pyramids have stood for millennia. But mathematics wasn't just for kings and monuments. In the heart of southern Africa, the builders of Great Zimbabwe designed vast stone cities without mortar, using precise geometric calculations to keep the walls standing tall for centuries. In West Africa, mathematics wasn't just about buildings or trade. It was sacred. The Yoruba developed a binary counting system, eerily similar to the one used in today's computers. Could it be that the foundation of modern technology traces back to ancient African wisdom? For centuries, these achievements were overlooked, dismissed as myths. But history does not lie. The numbers, the calculations, the structures, all bear witness to Africa's legacy as a master of mathematics. So, the next time you hear of mathematical geniuses, remember, long before Europe's Enlightenment, the great minds of Africa had already cracked the code of the universe. What if I told you
What is a binary system? Binary code is well suited for digital systems because it can easily represent two states, such as on-off, true-false, or high-low voltage. Binary code is used to represent various types of data, including numbers, letters, images, and even sound. Binary code also represents instructions that tell the computer what to do, allowing it to perform calculations and operations. The binary number 1010 in decimal is 10. While binary is the foundation of other coding systems like ASCII and Unicode, including UTF-8, are used to translate binary code into characters, text, and other human-readable formats. ASCII means the American Standard Code for Information and Interchange. So the ASCII code for the letter A, meaning that the computer has to binarily create out of numbers the letter A. The ASCII code for the letter A in computer language is 01000001. The binary system. 0 or 1. Could be off, on, true, false, yin, yang, woman, man as a binary system, moon and sun as a binary metaphor, right brain and left brain. Our binary brain system. Our binary brain system are the foundations of digital computations. Artificial neural networks, ANN, are inspired by how the brain works. While they use binary and floating point numbers, they simulate the firing of neurons. So the binary system is a simplified abstraction of how our brain processes information. The brain often thinks in dualities: good, bad, yes, no, light, dark, truth, false. This binary pattern of thought could be seen as a fundamental mental habit, even though the brain is capable of much more complex, nonlinear, and symbolic thinking. Our mental habits often reflect binary-like processing: yes, no, true, false. Binary is a useful simplification of more complex biological cognitive processes. Now, let's step into the good stuff. Let's build the bridge between binary thought, the brain, and the Kemetic sacred duality, like Ma'at and Isfet, in the context of cosmic order and consciousness. Binary thought as a mental tool. At a basic level, our brains use contrast to make sense of the world: light versus dark, pleasure versus pain, safe versus unsafe. This dualistic processing is not inherently good or bad. It's a survival mechanism. Binary systems, 1, 0, on, off, reflect this type of contrast-based logic. In Kemetic terms, we might say this is the realm of separation where we perceive opposites. But Kemetic philosophy doesn't stop at opposites. It uses duality as a gateway to wholeness. Ma'at and Isfet, sacred duality. Ma'at, order, truth, balance, and Isfet, chaos, falsehood, imbalance, are not just opposites, they are complementary forces that shape the cosmos. They are like the one and the zero of the spiritual world. But unlike digital binary, which is rigid, Kemetic duality is dynamic and interrelated. In other words, Ma'at is not just good, it's the alignment of all parts in harmony. Isfet is not just evil, it's what occurs when that harmony is disturbed. So in this sense, the brain's binary logic is like a tool for perceiving duality, while the consciousness behind the brain seeks to reconcile or transcend that duality, returning to Ma'at. Cosmic order and consciousness. In Kemetic thought, the cosmos is structured, not random. Everything has its place, purpose, and divine rhythm. Think of Ma'at as the cosmic law. The binary structure in computers, ones and zeros, creates complex systems, just like duality in the universe creates motion, cycles, and transformation. Consciousness, as experienced by the human being, is the interface between these polarities. You could say the brain processes duality, but the soul seeks unity. Transcending duality. Kemetic teachings don't just highlight the two truths, duality, they point towards synthesis, like a balance scale measuring the heart against the feather of Ma'at. The goal is not just judgment, but integration. In spiritual evolution, we transcend binary thinking, not by rejecting it, but by seeing through it to the deeper oneness, neter. The brain gives us the tools to discern opposites, a kind of biological binary system. The mind, spirit invites us to see through the opposites and realign with Ma'at, divine order. Just like a computer runs binary code, the universe runs sacred law, but it's not rigid, it's alive, balanced, and fluid.